Dear friends, as we dive into this week's Bible study, I want you to picture yourself as a child bringing a gift to your father. Imagine the joy and excitement of presenting something you've worked hard on, even if it's just a small, imperfect token of love. Now imagine your father receiving it with open arms, a warm smile, and deep appreciation, not because of the value of the gift itself, but because it came from you. This is how God sees us in our efforts to love and serve Him. The verse from Zephaniah 3 verse 17 is a beautiful reminder of God's tender love for us. The Lord your God in your midst, the Mighty One, will save. He will rejoice over you with gladness. He will quiet you with His love. He will rejoice over you with singing. This verse paints a picture of a God who doesn't just tolerate us. He delights in us. Can you imagine that? The Creator of the universe rejoices over you, sings over you, and quiets your fears with His love. It's like a father cradling his child in his arms, whispering, "You are loved. You are safe." The prodigal son, a father's love. The story of the prodigal son in Luke 15 verses 11 to 32 is another powerful example of God's love. When the younger son squandered his inheritance and hit rock bottom, he decided to return home, not expecting to be welcomed as a son, but hoping to be accepted as a servant. Yet, what did the father do? He ran to meet his son while he was still far off, embraced him, and celebrated his return with a feast. The father's reaction shows us the heart of God. No matter how far we stray, He is always ready to welcome us back with open arms. He doesn't focus on our failures. Instead, He rejoices in our return. This is the same God who rejoices over us with singing, as Zephaniah 3 verse 17 tells us. But let's not forget the older son in the story. He struggled with jealousy and fairness, feeling overlooked despite his faithfulness. This reminds us that God's love isn't about fairness by human standards. It's about grace. The older son had always been with the father and had access to everything, but he missed the joy of celebrating his brother's return. Let's not let pride or comparison rob us of the joy of God's love, God's delight in us. It's hard to imagine that we, as flawed and sinful as we are, could bring joy to a perfect and holy God. Yet, the Bible assures us that we do. Psalm 149 verse 4 says, "For the Lord takes delight in His people. He crowns the humble with victory." And Isaiah 43 verse 4 reminds us, "You are precious and honored in my sight, and I love you." God's delight in each person isn't based on our performance or perfection. It's rooted in His love for us as His children. Just as a parent treasures their child, God treasures you. Even when we stumble, His love remains steadfast, and He works through Christ to transform us into His likeness. Faith that pleases God. You might wonder, how can I please God when I feel so weak or unworthy? The answer is found in faith. Hebrews 11 verse 6 says, "Without faith, it is impossible to please God." But faith doesn't have to be perfect or strong. It just needs to be genuine. Remember the father in Mark 9 verse 24 who cried out to Jesus, "I believe. Help my unbelief." Jesus didn't turn him away for having imperfect faith. Instead, He honored that small, honest cry for help. God doesn't expect us to have it all together. He simply asks us to trust Him, even with our doubts and fears. And when we do, He works in us and through us, making our lives a testimony of His grace. Living to please God. As we grow in our relationship with God, our goal should be to live in a way that pleases Him, not out of obligation, but out of love. Just like a child who wants to make their father proud, we are called to reflect God's love in our actions. Colossians 1 verse 10 encourages us to live a life worthy of the Lord and please Him in every way. This doesn't mean we have to be perfect. It means we strive to love others, show kindness, and trust God in every area of our lives. Even small acts of love and faithfulness bring joy to God's heart. A worthy goal. Finally, let's remember that God's love is not just about accepting us as we are. It's about transforming us into who He created us to be. Through Christ, we are being made new, prepared for a future where we will live with him forever. As 1 John 3 verse 2 says, when Christ appears, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. So, my dear friends, let's hold on to the hope that God's love gives us. No matter what challenges we face, we can rest in the assurance that we are his beloved children. He is with us, he delights in us, and he is working all things for our good. Let's respond to his love with faith, gratitude, and a desire to live for his glory. Remember, you are deeply loved by your Heavenly Father. Never forget that. With love and blessings,